In the past several years, it has become clear that the technique of mass, nonviolent direct action has not only become the accepted method of the civil rights movement, but beyond that, the vast majority of all Americans now support and approve it. What began as a limited expression of protest 10 years ago in Montgomery, Alabama, to integrate a bus line has grown into a national phenomenon. Its history spiraled over a decade. The movement returned to Montgomery and involved in direct action nuns and priests, rabbis, Protestant ministers, and laity of every race, social class, and age. Many observers have been surprised and even shocked by these methods. The enemies of the civil rights movement have been quick and vocal to denounce him as undemocratic pressure tactics and even un-American in philosophy. Yet the truth is that no one can scorn nonviolent direct action or civil disobedience without canceling out American history. The first nonviolent direct action did not occur in Montgomery. Its roots go back to the American Revolution and the boycott against British tea, culminating in the Boston Tea Party. It was the favorite weapon of the suffragette movement when women had to fight for their right to vote. It was a technique the trade unions employed to organize the mass production industries. Many here tonight can recall the events of the 30s, when federal court injunctions crippled and stifled union organization. Even a Wagner Act could not facilitate a breakthrough. When the now historic sit-down strikes burst forth in 1937, a new national attitude congealed. Through the Congress of Industrial Organizations, a new major movement was born. Then, too, the nation was warned that the profit system was a target of this new form of struggle. Nearly 3 decades later, we're able to see that the profit system was not only unimpaired, but became significantly strengthened. If there is some confusion about the origins of nonviolent direct action, that is even more about civil disobedience. The two methods are not synonymous. Civil disobedience in its true sense has not been employed by Negroes in their struggle. To utilize civil disobedience in its authentic historical form involves defiance of fundamental national law. For example, when Antigone insisted upon her right to follow her individual conscience and religious convictions to bury her brother, she was defying the king and the unqualified majesty of his law. When the Quakers refused to return runaway slaves, they were defying the Supreme Court in the Dred Scott decision. When Thoreau refused to pay taxes in protest against the Mexican War, he was breaking a fundamental legislative enactment and opposing the declaration of war of the Congress. Certainly we all understand this, and I heartily approve of civil disobedience in a creative sense in many instances. But we must see that the Negro today, when he marches in the streets, is not practicing civil disobedience because he is not challenging the Constitution, the Supreme Court, or the enactments of Congress. Instead, he seeks to uphold them. He may be violating local municipal ordinances or state laws, but it is these laws which constitute basic national law. Negroes, by their direct action, are exposing the contradiction. The civil disobedience, or I should say uncivil disobedience in the situation, resting on unjust foundations, is that of the segregationists. Negroes have not willfully and frivolously violated the law. Many good-hearted people believe they do exactly that and forgive them on grounds that they endured appalling grievances. Yet these people forgive them for misdeeds they are not committing. The truly unsocial lawbreaker disregards law because he, as an individual, is seeking a personal advantage. Negroes have never forgotten it. Even under the crushing burdens of injustice, they are connected with the larger society, that the roads they may obstruct, the public buildings they picket are used in common by all citizens. For that reason, before a protest can be approved by responsible leadership, they must answer the following questions. 1, do we have a just grievance? Or is our purpose merely to create confusion for its own sake as a form of revenge? 2, have we first used every form of normal means to eliminate the problem by negotiation, petition, and appropriate appeals to authority? 3, having found these channels useless or forcibly closed to us, when we embark upon any type of lawbreaking, are we prepared to accept the consequences society will inflict and to maintain, even under punishment, a sense of brotherhood? 4, do we have a clear program to relieve injustice which does not inflict injustice upon others? And is that program reasonable and grounded in the ethics and best traditions of our society? In establishing these prerequisite conditions before employing direct action, the civil rights movement meets its responsibility to society and fulfills its obligations to democratic principles. Even after the movement embarks upon a program of nonviolent direct action or civil disobedience, its purposes are not narrowly confined to attain benefits exclusively for the Negro. It is an axiom of nonviolent action and democracy that when any group struggles properly and justly to achieve its own rights, it enlarges the rights of all. This element is what makes both democracy and nonviolent action self-renewing and creative. What advantages have all Americans derived from the growth of nonviolent direct action and civil rights? First, the struggle dissolves the deceptive facade and reveals basic evils and contradictions in the society. Tens of millions of Americans a decade ago were ignorant of the actual conditions of life of the Negro, both in the North and in the South. Until there was awareness, there could be no consensus to make corrections. The long list of federal legislative enactments and Supreme Court decisions illustrate how extensive were the wrongs that blighted our society. Second, programs for remedying evils are not confined in their effects to Negroes. The Negroes took to the streets to demand job opportunities for themselves. They helped to stimulate a broad war on poverty concept, which ultimately will benefit more whites than Negroes. The Negroes, by direct action, seek to participate in the electoral process. They awaken the apathetic white who so took his rights for granted that he neglected to use them. When Negroes boycotted schools, they did more than reveal classroom discrimination. They brought to the fore such criticisms as those of Dr. Comer, who had long charged we were seeking to utilize 19th century educational methods in conditions of 20th century urbanization. pushing through the issue of desegregation, that emerged a new and startling question of paramount importance to the whole population. What is quality education, and how is it attained for all under conditions of population growth, automation, and redistribution of population in sprawling cities? Sociologists will find much to ponder in the striking fact that after the futile efforts to achieve brotherhood and ecumenicity by discussion and conferences in the streets of Selma and Montgomery and at the Lincoln Memorial, there was the greatest and warmest expression of religious unity of Catholic, Protestant, and Jew in the nation's history. One of the most profound of all results of the Negro upsurge has been its effect upon the youth of the nation. From the student-led sit-ins of 1960, an awakening of social thought and action has swept the campuses of the nation. In addition to overcoming the stultifying effects of McCarthyism, the movement has, in a few years, changed the total description of American youth. From the silent generation, they have become the morally and socially concerned generation. From the single issue of civil rights, interest has broadened to questions of peace and poverty. From exclusively student involvement, the issues now have become the concern of faculty and scholars of every description. It is noteworthy that the vibrant movement to re-examine our foreign policy, which the government now respects and welcomes, borrowed its title Teach-ins from the Civil Rights Movement. The student awakening and the student mass action rest upon no specific political tendency, but impresses the whole democratic political spectrum. I have discussed the social effects of nonviolent mass direct action at length because I believe it is too often limited in its application merely to the civil rights movement. Perhaps if there had been a broader understanding of the uses of nonviolent direct action in Germany when Hitler was rising and consolidating his power, the brutal extermination of 6 million Jews, millions of other war dead might have been averted, and Germany might never have become totalitarian. Protestants and Catholics had engaged in nonviolent direct action, had made the oppression of the Jews their very own oppression, and had come into the streets beside the Jews to scrub the sidewalks, and had Gentiles worn the stigmatizing yellow armbands by the millions. A unique form of mass resistance to the Nazi regime might have developed. I'm fully aware of the terror, the intimidation, the brutality, and the force the fascists were so quick to use. But I am also aware that in the South today, some races of the same mentality have been curbed in their resistance to nonviolent action when practiced on a mass scale. Today, people all over the world should be engaging in mass action to protest anti-Semitism in the Soviet Union. That is a dangerous silence today, which unintentionally encourages evil to flourish. Was Albert Einstein right when he said, "The world is in greater peril from those who tolerate evil than from those who actively commit it"? Not President Kennedy warned that those who do nothing are inviting shame as well as violence. Will the nation ever forget the searing impact of Rabbi Joachim Prince's admonition as he spoke at the March on Washington in 1963? When I was